So what does it mean? Finally, a deal in Austin on Texas property taxes.
It is a compromise on the plans put forth by the House and the Senate, which are now in their second special legislative session to deal with this very issue. So here's what's in that deal. It reduces your school property tax rate. It increases the homestead exemption to $100,000 and creates a pilot program to give tax credits on properties that don't have a homestead exemption.
Still a big question here, though, in all that. What does this do to school funding? And could it lower your property taxes now only to cost us more in the future?
That is what we're looking at in this KSAT Explains, plus the proposals that lawmakers wrestled with to get here.
Our citizens are needing help.
There are long-term implications to this.
Eliminating the school M&O tax is the goal.
There's just not enough revenue to do it.
The money's got to come from somewhere.
Lawmakers have been struggling for months to find common ground on property tax relief.
The Senate had a plan, the House had a plan. The end of the session passed with no solution on that.
But Governor Abbott told lawmakers to get it done and go into overtime to do it. The first special legislative session ended in a stalemate, so lawmakers went into double overtime, wrestling with two plans that have one giant similarity, something called compression.
The biggest portion of your property tax bill is the independent school district in your area.
Both the House and Senate proposals include a plan to compress the property tax rate set by local school districts. If that rate is lowered, you pay less, but public schools will still need the money. So lawmakers in both chambers want to use roughly $12 billion the state has in a surplus to make up the difference for schools.
The House plan currently is what the governor has asked for, which is compression only.
It would lower property taxes for all property owners. But the Senate plan favors homeowners by increasing homestead exemptions from $40,000 to $100,000. Voters would later have to approve that. It's the plan Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick supports. This would not be the first time state lawmakers have approved compressing school property tax rates. They did in 2019. The state pays billions for that compression every year.
There's already $5 billion cooked into the budget for property tax relief. So when you hear the number $17 billion for property tax relief, really what's being debated in Austin is more like $12 to $13 billion.
That's a one-time deal.
Right, that's just for 2 years.
That's just for 2 years.
Right.
So what happens at the end of those 2 years?
If what was done in the year 2023 was to take one-time money to buy down local property taxes, there's nothing to keep them from going up 2 and 4 years from now.
The concept of what they're doing isn't bad. It's just that the math doesn't work long term. My name is Josh Sanderson. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Equity Center.
The Equity Center represents more than 600 Texas school districts in the legislative process, especially when it comes to funding. That roughly $12 to $13 billion to pay for this property tax relief would come from the roughly $33 billion surplus the state has now.
That surplus is completely unprecedented. Think of it as one-time money because it's not a regular occurring thing, and they're applying it to an ongoing cost.
Sanderson says it's like using a one-time bonus to buy a more expensive car. You get the extra cash the one time, but your car payments come around every month.
For everybody who works on the budget, this is glaringly obvious.
There's no way taking money out of, in essence, a savings account to pay for an ongoing reduction in taxes is going to work.
But what's also not working are crippling property taxes for Texans. Texas is one of 7 states that does not have income tax.
There was a lieutenant governor named Bullock in the 1990s who tried to talk about the idea of having an income tax.
But that proved to be politically unpopular. He pushed through a constitutional amendment prohibiting a personal income tax in Texas, and it's even referred to as the Bullock Amendment.
And then in 2019, they had another amendment.
Voters actually strengthened that constitutional prohibition,
which made it even harder to get an income tax. You have 2/3 of voters to pass it. It's not going to happen.
The amount you pay in property taxes is based off of your property appraisal, which is determined by the local appraisal district. In Bexar County, appraisal values shot up by roughly 28% in 2022. 15% in 2023.
Property taxes at the end of the day are actually local taxes. The real answer to controlling the property tax burden lies at the local level.
The different taxing entities listed on your property tax bill set their own tax rates.
They're going to determine the budget. What is it that the city of San Antonio or the county of Bear want to accomplish this year? What's it going to take to get there?
The state puts a limit on how much those entities can increase their rates each year, no more than 3.5%. But that percentage can be banked.
And so you can go above 3.5% if you only say you spent 2.5% last year.
That limit does not apply to the hospital district or Alamo College's district. They can increase rates by as much as 8%. But some local entities are making moves to try to lessen the burden. Alamo Colleges approved a new homestead exemption of 1%, or a minimum of $5,000. The city of San Antonio just doubled its homestead exemption from 10% to 20%.
If we didn't have the property tax, government would not be able to function.
And it's much the same for public schools. Governor Abbott has suggested pushing property tax relief even further by eliminating the main portion of school property tax rates altogether. It's called the Maintenance and Operations Tax, or M&O. It's what pays for day-to-day expenses like teacher salaries, utilities, and maintenance. The Texas Public Policy Foundation, a conservative think tank, has been talking about a plan to wipe out property taxes for years. And now Governor Abbott has endorsed it. The plan calls for the state to continue compressing property tax rates over 10 years and restrict government spending and growth to create future surpluses. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has called it,
and that's a fantasy,
and one that would require a huge jump in sales tax.
Eventually, we're going to get to a point to where you can't pay for this anymore because the state just doesn't have the money to do it long term. The dog is going to catch this car.
Representatives with the Texas Public Policy Foundation declined our request for an interview for This Explains. So what do you want to see us explain? We cover all kinds of topics. Scan this QR code to go straight to the KSAT Explains page, where you can find all of our coverage and a place to send in your own ideas.
Keep up to date with all of San Antonio's top news, weather, and so much more by clicking the like and subscribe buttons below. And once again, thanks for watching KSAT.